I want to have a look at, what does that story look like in terms of some of the key talking points? Because we've talked a lot about a cooling market and what that looks like. Well, here's a great graphic coming in from our good friends at CoreLogic in terms of the number of markets that are cooling compared to those suburbs or markets that are growing. Do you want to take us through these numbers?
Just under 30%, Ben, at 29.2. So the national percentage of suburbs in quarterly decline is 29.2, which is interesting. But if you look at the detail, the majority of that's coming from Melbourne. Okay.
Yep.
Hobart, Darwin, and Canberra are around the 50. So Melbourne was at almost 80%. Hobart, Darwin, and Canberra are hovering around that either 51 to 54%. But then you go back to the darlings of the property market in Australia right now of Brisbane, Adelaide, and Perth. 3.8% Brisbane, 3.1% Adelaide, and 0.0% Ben in the old
not a suburb.
None.
Not a suburb in decline in Perth, in the Perth market. So that also, again, everyone sort of said Perth's got to stop at some point. Well, that data doesn't suggest it's ready to stop. That's sort of still telling us now the growth cycle is slowing.
Yeah, the momentum is slowing, but it's
the momentum is slowing, exactly. So that's why I think that's a nice talking point. The other talking point that we also want to just continue to highlight when we lift our eyes from the here and now, the recent market, is we want to talk to this particular story, and this is the number of $1 million suburbs that are changing across the Australian market right now. And this is what we keep saying, is that eventually every suburb will eventually get to a median of $1 million, and then there'll be medians of 2 million, 3 million over the next several decades. So we saw some of the net changes going on here. So we saw in the Greater Sydney, another 46 suburbs moved into that median $1 million price range. Greater Brisbane's had again a great run off the back of this, a couple of years of strong growth that they've had. 46 suburbs joined that particular story. Perth, 36 suburbs joined. Regional Queensland also had 30 suburbs join, so that bodes well for Sunshine Coast, also Gold Coast, and some of those sort of really blue chip areas in some of those regional towns. Greater Adelaide, 29 suburbs joined, and then regional New South Wales, 22 suburbs joined, and then Australian Capital Territory, 6. Then you got Greater Melbourne, only 4 joined. And remember that 75% quartile and that mid-quartile, that's what's pushing that down. That's why we haven't had that. And then regional WA, only 1 extra suburb. And then regional Vic lost 2 out of that $1 million price median. But let's put that into context, Bryce. Let's just sort of give the audience a bit of an understanding of those broader numbers in terms of how many suburbs do we currently see where there's houses and units with a median price tag of $1 million or more.
Yeah, well, in Sydney, there's 448 suburbs with a current median above $1 million, and that's comparison to its next biggest capital city, which is Melbourne, which is less than half, so 191. Brisbane has 149, Adelaide 104, Perth has 96, and Hobart has 3. But those that rose above $1 million, Ben, in Sydney, there was another 37. So that's to the point that you were talking about earlier. Poor old Melbourne has the record of having 2 that fell below $1 million, whereas none of the other capitals had any that fell below.
And for a little bit of context there, like if you look at Sydney's suburb analysed, 572 suburbs, 448 of those have a median above 1 million. And then you've got Melbourne, which 378 suburbs are analysed, and you've got 191. So you're getting back down, into still above 50%, but only just, right? And then you've got Brisbane sort of hovering around that 50% mark, and the same with Adelaide below 50%, and then Perth definitely below. And then you got, this is the wealth of New South Wales. You've also got, of the 494 regional suburbs in New South Wales, 111 of them. So when you start thinking about that beautiful coastline, as you go up through Palm Beach and then into, all of that sort of lovely coastline heading up towards Newcastle and all that area through there, you've got some very, very wealthy areas, all coastal, beautiful infrastructure, long-term, economic drivers into those regions, and that's why you got 111 of those suburbs and
And
25
25
extra.
rows.
Yeah.
25 with 3 didn't. So that's a net 22 going into that bracket.
And I suspect that also thinking about the aging population who are downsizing out of the Sydney market to get to their, retirement markets, that's going to bode well for those particular markets. It's unsustainable over the long term. We need those economic drivers. But if I'm downsizing, and I've got a bit of a spare cash, I'm going to whack that into Suburbs. I'm also going to buy myself $1 million property with ocean views, as part of that particular story. So